The evening light slanted softly through the small window, falling in golden streaks across the humble living room. Dust motes floated lazily in the fading sun, catching the glow and turning the room into a quiet, shimmering sanctuary. Old photographs lined the wooden walls, yellowed faces staring back like ghosts of a life lived long before. The air smelled faintly of lavender and the warmth of baked bread. Grandmother sat in her rocking chair, a shawl draped over her shoulders, knitting needles clicking quietly in her wrinkled hands. Her hair, once black and lustrous, was now a soft cloud of silver. Her eyes, though tired, held a quiet spark, a glint of memories too numerous and too heavy to recount all at once. Beside her, little Mira, her 5-year-old granddaughter, perched on the edge of the sofa, legs swinging back and forth. Her eyes, wide and innocent, followed every movement of her grandmother. Sometimes she reached out, laying her small hand gently over the grandmother's, marveling at the rough texture and the age-etched lines. "Grandma," Mira asked softly, "what were you like when you were my age?" The question seemed to ripple through the room, stirring memories long tucked away. Grandmother paused, her gaze drifting to the window as if seeing something far beyond the present moment. "I was much like you, little one," she said, her voice carrying the weight of years and a soft, lingering warmth. Curious, bold, and unaware of the storms life was about to bring. As she spoke, the room shifted, almost imperceptibly, and the walls faded into scenes of a long-ago time. The smell of bread was replaced by the acrid scent of smoke. Young hands, calloused and strong, worked endlessly to pull a plow through stubborn earth. Faces of children playing in the dirt with laughter unbound, and then the hollow shadow of hunger that came with famine, loss, war. Grandmother's voice guided Mira through these memories, her words painting pictures more vivid than any photograph. "I lost my parents when I was just 12. The world became heavy all at once, and I had to learn to carry it, even when I wanted to crumble." Mira's tiny fingers found her grandmother's again. "Did it hurt a lot?" Grandmother's lips curved into a sad, soft smile. "Oh yes, my dear. Sometimes the hurt feels endless, like a river that refuses to stop. But there is always a little light somewhere, even when you think it's gone." She recalled her first love, a young man with eyes like storm clouds and a laugh that could chase away the darkest days. The memory brought both warmth and pain. "He promised me forever, and life had other plans," she murmured, her gaze far away. The room shimmered back to the present, the golden light of evening spilling again across the worn wooden floor. Mira leaned her head on her grandmother's shoulder, feeling the rhythm of her heartbeat and the steady pulse of stories etched into every line of her face. "You're so brave, Grandma," Mira whispered. Grandmother's eyes softened, and she drew the child close. "We all are, in our own way. Bravery isn't about fighting storms. Sometimes it's about standing through them and finding hope, even when it seems impossible." Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and violet. Inside, a small lamp flickered to life, casting a golden glow over the room. And in that warmth, amidst shadows of the past and whispers of hope, the bond between grandmother and granddaughter deepened, stitched together by love, survival, and the enduring strength of memory. The evening had deepened into a quiet twilight, and the small lamp cast a soft circle of warmth across the room. Mira sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes wide, still holding her grandmother's hand. The rhythmic sound of knitting filled the spaces between words, a gentle punctuation to the stories that flowed from memory. Grandmother paused for a moment, her hands hovering over the yarn. The familiar motion felt heavy tonight, as though the threads themselves carried the weight of old sorrows. She glanced down at Mira, whose curious gaze seemed to beckon her onward. "When I was 17, she began, voice low and steady, "I had to leave the village I grew up in. There was no choice. The famine had come, and hunger was swallowing everything we had left, even hope." She rocked slightly in her chair, the creak of the wood punctuating her words. "I remember saying goodbye to the only home I had ever known. My mother's apron smelled of bread and smoke, and my father's hands were rough, but they trembled as they held mine. I did not cry. I thought I had to be strong." A shadow passed over her face, and the room seemed to grow colder, even in the lamp's golden light. "I traveled to the city, carrying nothing but a small bag of clothes and a heart full of fear. I found work as a seamstress in a large, noisy house where the walls seemed to swallow me whole. The lady of the house treated me well enough, but I was invisible. A shadow in their world, a voice that spoke only when needed." Mira's eyes shimmered. "Did you ever feel lonely, Grandma?" Grandmother's gaze softened. "Lonely. Yes. There were nights I cried into the pillow, whispering names I would never hear again. But I also learned something important, that survival often requires silence, and courage is born in those quiet, unseen moments." Her mind drifted back to the first time she truly loved someone. His name was Armin. He worked at the docks, his skin tanned from the sun, and his hands rough like the ropes he handled. They met by chance in a small marketplace, laughing over spilled vegetables, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to stop. "I loved him," she said, almost in a whisper, "with all the fierceness a young heart can hold. But life, it has a way of testing us. War came, and Armin was called away. Letters came at first, full of hope and promises, and then nothing." Tears gathered, unbidden, and she quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. Mira, sensing the gravity of the moment, reached out and pressed her forehead gently against her grandmother's arm. "Grandma, it's okay to cry," she said softly. Grandmother smiled through the ache. "I know, little one. I've cried many times, but sometimes those tears are what remind you that you are still alive, still human, still capable of hope." Her eyes softened further as she recalled the life that followed. She had learned to stretch meager wages, to cook with whatever ingredients were left, to find small joys in stolen moments. She had nursed neighbors through illness, patched holes in roofs during storms, and built friendships that became lifelines. "I realized that life doesn't always give us what we want," she said, "but it gives us choices. And those choices, no matter how small, can carry the weight of love, of survival, of meaning." Outside, the wind whispered against the windows, carrying with it the faint scent of autumn leaves. Mira nestled closer, her small hand entwined with her grandmother's. "I want to be brave like you," she whispered. Grandmother chuckled softly, the sound like the gentle ringing of old bells. "You already are, my dear. Bravery isn't just about fighting battles. It's about feeling everything, letting it teach you, and carrying it forward without letting it break you." The evening deepened into night, the shadows stretching across the room like long memories. And in that small, quiet house, amidst the glow of the lamp and the gentle hum of knitting, a grandmother and her granddaughter shared the weight of life's lessons, its pain, its love, and the enduring power of hope. The lamp flickered softly, its golden glow wrapping around the small living room like a warm embrace. Mira sat cross-legged on the floor, still holding her grandmother's hand, her small face rapt with attention. Outside, the night had settled completely, and the faint hum of distant cicadas echoed through the quiet town. Grandmother leaned back in her rocking chair, her shawl wrapped tightly around her frail shoulders. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling the memories settle like dust in the corners of her mind. "When I became a mother," she began, her voice low and trembling, "I thought I had learned everything about sacrifice. I was wrong. Nothing can prepare you for the weight of another life resting entirely on your own." Her eyes opened slowly, glistening with a mixture of sorrow and pride. "Your father, he was just a boy when I married him. I loved him with everything I had, but life is rarely kind to young love. There were days when I worked from before dawn until well past sunset, stitching, scrubbing, cooking, doing everything I could to keep our small family alive. Every coin I earned went to food, to clothes, to schooling for the children. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford." Mira leaned closer, her tiny hand pressing against her grandmother's. "Were you ever tired, Grandma?" Grandmother smiled faintly, a small, bittersweet curl of her lips. "Always. But sometimes, being tired isn't the same as being defeated. I had to carry on because there was nothing else I could do, and I wanted to give them more than I had, even if it was just love and hope." Her voice trembled as she recounted the hardest days, the moments of unbearable loss. One winter, disease swept through their village. She remembered carrying her youngest child, barely able to walk, from one small clinic to another, pleading for care that rarely came. She lost friends, neighbors, even relatives she had known her whole life. The grief felt relentless, like waves crashing over her, threatening to pull her under. "I would hold my children close at night," she said, her hands moving over Mira's, "and whisper to them that everything would be all right, even when inside, my heart was breaking. I learned that love isn't about what you can give when it's easy. It's about what you give when it feels impossible to give anything at all." Mira's eyes glimmered with tears. "Did it ever get easier?" Grandmother shook her head slowly. "No, little one, life never gets easier, but it teaches you something far more valuable: resilience. You learn to rise, even when your body and your heart are screaming to fall. You learn to hold on to hope, even when the world seems determined to take it away." She paused, rocking slightly in her chair, the soft creak of the wood like the rhythm of a heartbeat. "I remember one particular night," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "when the firewood ran out and the wind howled like a pack of wolves. The children were shivering, and I had nothing to warm them. I remember thinking, I cannot let them feel fear tonight. I cannot let them feel hopelessness. So I sang. I sang lullabies I barely remembered, and I held them close. And in that moment, even with nothing, we had everything: love." Her hands, rough with years of work and sacrifice, now rested over Mira's tiny ones. "Everything I did, every hardship I endured, every tear I shed, it was all for love. And that, my darling, is what makes us strong. Not the absence of pain, but the courage to keep going despite it." The night deepened, and the room grew quieter, the only sound the rhythmic ticking of the old clock on the wall. Mira leaned her head against her grandmother's shoulder, feeling the warmth and strength emanating from her. "I want to be strong like you, Grandma," she whispered. Grandmother's eyes softened, glistening in the lamplight. "You already are, little one. Every time you smile, every time you care for someone else, you carry a piece of this strength forward. That is how hope survives. That is how love survives." Outside, the stars began to peek through the velvet night sky, and inside, the bond between grandmother and granddaughter grew even stronger, woven together through shared stories, tears, and the enduring power of love that can survive any storm. The wind outside whispered through the eaves of the small home, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked earth. Inside, The lamp's glow had dimmed slightly, casting long, soft shadows across the worn wooden floor. Mira sat cross-legged on the rug, still holding her grandmother's hands, sensing that the next story would be different, heavier, yet filled with meaning. Grandmother drew a deep breath, her eyes distant, as if seeing a lifetime's worth of memories spread before her. As the children grew, life changed again, she began. Her voice carried both strength and a hint of sorrow. I had hoped that the sacrifices, the endless nights of worry, the constant struggle, would be enough. But love, even when given freely, sometimes meets selfishness in return. Mira tilted her head, curiosity mixing with concern. What do you mean, Grandma? Grandmother's fingers tightened around hers, and she gave a soft, sad smile. Sometimes, those you give your heart to the most expect more than you can give. Your uncles and aunts, they grew up, but instead of gratitude, there was entitlement. They began asking for things that were never promised, things that I had to guard carefully, even when it pained me. Her eyes glimmered in the lamplight, reflecting years of hard-earned wisdom. I remember the day my eldest came to me, demanding half of my pension, claiming it was rightfully theirs. I was shocked, hurt even. But I had learned by then that my value was not determined by what I gave others, but by how I lived and loved through every hardship. Mira's small hand squeezed hers. What did you do? She asked softly. Grandmother chuckled quietly, a bittersweet sound that carried decades of experience. I told them that what I had was earned with my sweat, my tears, and my prayers. I could share if I wanted, but I would not be bullied into giving what I needed to survive. And more importantly, I would never let greed dictate my love. That love is precious, and it cannot be measured by coins or demands. She leaned back slightly, the rocking chair creaking gently beneath her. There were other disappointments too. Friends who turned away, opportunities that slipped through my fingers, the quiet ache of loneliness that sometimes settled in my bones. But I learned to find peace in the small things, the laughter of a grandchild, the warmth of a sunbeam across the floor, the gentle rhythm of a life lived fully, even with its scars. Mira's eyes glistened, a mix of wonder and admiration. Did it make you sad? Yes, her grandmother admitted softly. It made me sad. But sadness is not weakness. It is a companion that teaches you how precious joy really is. I learned to accept that life will never be perfect, but it can still be beautiful. Every struggle, every tear, every heartbreak, it shapes you, teaches you, and makes the moments of love and laughter even brighter. She held Mira close, resting her forehead against hers. And that, my dear, is what I want you to carry with you. Life will ask much of you, sometimes more than you think you can give. But in the end, your heart, your courage, your love, that is what endures. That is what makes life worth living. The night grew deeper, and the lamp's soft glow illuminated the gentle lines of her face, lines carved by love, loss, endurance, and hope. Mira hugged her grandmother tightly, feeling the strength that had carried generations through storms, heartbreaks, and uncertainty. Outside, the first drops of rain tapped lightly against the window. Inside, in the quiet sanctuary of the small home, grandmother and granddaughter shared a silence that spoke louder than words, a silence filled with history, wisdom, and the enduring warmth of love that could survive even the darkest nights. Grandmother whispered, almost to herself, "No matter what life demands, never lose your heart, Mira. Never lose hope. That is the legacy of every life that has loved before you, and now it is yours to carry forward." And in that small, quiet room, The bond between them grew even stronger, a living thread connecting past to present, hardship to hope, sorrow to love, and loss to the quiet triumph of resilience.